Welcome. This is Unfolding, the show where I unfold creative business minds. My name is Marco Pfaden, and now I just want you to sit back and enjoy the show. So, we're back. Today we're talking to Stephen Price, the founder of Stash Media. And I've been following Stash since I actually grew up with motion design, 20 years ago. I admired Stash Media, the work you do, the content you curate. Stephen is probably the person that watched the most motion graphic videos in the world. And I would want to challenge everyone out there, if they think they watched more, contact me and I'll get you in touch with Stephen. So, welcome, Stephen.
Thank you. Happy to be here. I'm flattered. Thank you.
So what did I miss in the introduction? There was Stash Media, the Stash Collection.
It can be a little confusing. Stash Media is the parent company. We publish Stash Magazine, which is a daily news site about animation, visual effects, motion design. And then the subscriber product is called the Stash Permanent Collection. And that is published 6 times a year. It's been going for 20 years. And we're currently just about to publish issue 164. And that archive contains about 6,500 videos, plus behind the scenes and, exclusive interviews, blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to sell you that product right now, but it's a unique thing. It's a unique thing on the planet. It's a B2B streaming platform. It's like the Netflix for motion designers.
Mm-hmm. And as I've seen you granted me access. As I've seen, you have a beautiful tags. You can select what you want to look for. You can search for things, which is amazing. And the reason I want to talk to you and why I'm so grateful for having you on the show is because you not only have seen the most motion graphic videos out there, but you also have a broad big picture view on the industry, on the global industry, right? You don't just know the American market, you know the whole industry.
We try to, for sure. Yes, I think we do.
So when it comes to the global market of motion design, are there trends? Is there something you can predict? Is there something you see that others miss?
I don't know if it's something unique, but I could certainly put it into words, and that's the current thing, and it's actually been going for a long time. It's just continuing to increase. Is the sort of golden age of 3D design, as powerful 3D tools like Cinema 4D and more recently Houdini, combined with great rendering tools like Redshift and Octane, etc. As those get easier to use and cheaper, democratized basically, you have just the most amazing wave of people using that, and this resulting volume of amazing work that you wouldn't have seen even 3 years ago. And when I first started seeing this trend, it was maybe 7 or 8 years ago. And I tried to raise the flag about it in talks that I did, etc. But at that time, a tool like Houdini was still very much for very advanced users. It was very powerful, but you needed to be a very advanced user to use it. And since then, they have cracked the usability issue. And so now it's just one of the most, requested software that we see on the Stash Jobs site.
So really, Houdini got to the top?
Well, I don't think I think Cinema 4D is still the most requested 3D software, if you don't consider After Effects 3D and After Effects to be 3D. I'd say it would be Cinema 4D and then Houdini, and then into Maya and 3ds Max and that kind of stuff.
So that is what creatives love to do. So more and more creatives get into the 3D part and the 3D areas. And that obviously brings more content out to all markets, right? Is there also a trend out, like with the clients, that they request more 3D stuff? Do they want to see more 3D?
I think they do, because a lot of this stuff is just really beautiful. And so clients start to want it. Creatives love to produce it. And I think right now it's in a bit of a self-perpetuating cycle. And it's going to cool off at some point when it becomes too overused. But right now it's still, I would say, at its peak. Although you can see some people like Man vs. Machine, who, one of the first really big proponents of this style. They've started to branch out and do much more live action stuff, more stuff beyond just the beautiful 3D style thing that we're talking about at this moment, which we can qualify as being sort of that magic realism. Things look hyper real, but they're surreal at the same time. They're not trying to actually simulate reality. They go beyond reality. Does that make sense? So people like Future Deluxe and Tendril, Man vs. Machine, those kind of people like that. But there's literally hundreds of the studios now, literally hundreds. And they don't even need to be studios anymore. There's like kids coming out of school in South Korea that are doing astounding work, as student projects now. And you can't tell. If it was a blind taste test, you wouldn't be able to tell if that was coming from a major studio or from a 17-year-old kid.
So that's both terrifying and exciting at the same time.
It's exciting. You got to look at it as exciting. So 3D is, I think, is the obvious one. Beyond that, there is, I would say, a stronger than ever movement to studios and individual artists doing their own personal work, which is not new. I mean, people have always done that. They've always wanted to take a break, squeeze things in between client assignments, et cetera, et cetera. But I think from our point of view, we're seeing more of that. And we're also seeing those projects be more elaborate. So instead of just doing a 10-second thing at Christmas, right, which is kind of cute and whatever, we're seeing much more serious attempts at art, right?
Oh,
and so they're commissioning sound design for it and music for it. It's not just a one-off throwaway thing. It's there's serious short films. They may only be 30 seconds or 45 seconds long, but they really use it as a way to boost morale in the studio, get away from, doing pack shots and the usual pressures of client work, and also as an R&D platform, right? To try out new things, even creatively and technically. So that's really, we love that. We absolutely love that.
That's amazing. So studios actually use that as a playground to entertain the people, to keep the staff entertained. Also, they have to make money, so not all the jobs will be flagship projects, let's just say. They have to be
different shops value creativity differently. Some of them, creative is everything. That's what they live and die by. And others are much more business oriented, and they may never do one.
What I'm super curious about is, because you get so many pitches every day, like everyone wants to be on the next Dash issue. How do you select the people that go on your page?
Well, it's not a. In some ways, it's simple because I've been doing it a long time. So a lot of it is now by gut. It's by instinct, right? But if you break it down, it's a many layered thing. First of all, it can't be boring, right? And what does that really mean? It's a combination of, it needs to be creative, it needs to be technically executed well, and it needs to have an emotional impact in the end.
Yeah.
If you combine those three things in some manner that equates to feeling something, it could be laughter, it could be tearing up, it could be envy, it could be schadenfreude. It doesn't matter. I mean, it's a full spectrum of emotions and feelings that you're trying to conjure. And as long as it triggers something on that end, and on the technical side, it shows a mastery of the tools, right? Now, you're not just, it's not just the latest plugins that you've managed to buy. And then creatively, it needs to be doing something that maybe we haven't seen before, or if it is an idea that's been done before, it's just doing it really well, pushing it in a new direction. So generally, you look at those three things. We don't really care about the budget. We do care about the studio. If it's a studio that's has a history of doing great work, for instance, there is value in seeing what that studio is doing late, right? But in the same way, that's balanced out by a piece of work that maybe is not as virtuous, but it's been done by someone brand new, or a totally new team that you've never heard of from some part of the world that's not a media center, right? You balance all these things together. Sometimes there's a great personal story behind it, right? Sometimes there's a story like this. It's a personal film, and it's about the guy's grandfather who used to be an artist in Poland before the Nazis invaded. There's like a ton of ways that a story can be interesting, right? And so that's the advantage of having done it for so long, is that a lot of those factors I just sort of absorb by osmosis, and I can very, very quickly make a decision. Sometimes you can't. Sometimes a thing will come in and I write back saying, thank you, because we try to respond to every submission. And we say, thank you, your work is now in consideration for stash in the Stash Permanent Collection. And some of those will go directly to the bin, because you just know it's not for stash. But other times, you can't wait to post it. You literally can't wait to post it. You've already posted 3 things today. You should really wait till tomorrow. So you're spreading stuff out, right? But no, you have to post it now because you love it. And then there's other times you're just not sure, and it sits in a tab, right, on your browser for sometimes a week. And then you watch it again, and I don't know, and you watch it again, and then at some point maybe that will go in. So there's no hard and fast rules, because in the end I get to say what's in there, and I just try and I try not to be capricious about it. I try and make it consistent, but also surprising, so that when you come to stash, you're not going, oh yeah, it's more of that. Oh yeah, it's more of that.
Got it, yeah.
Right? So it's broadly based, but it's not so broadly based that you don't know what the focus is. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. Does personality play a role, like the personality of the studio, or maybe the founder even?
Absolutely. It's really great when people are not dilettantes, when people are serious about what they do, right? And when they're professional, when they're polite when they make submissions that are complete and not just, hey, here's my latest work. Hope you love it. And then that's it. Now, some of those will even arrive without a link.
Oh, seriously?
Yeah. All right. But now all you really need to do is go to the submit page, and it's not complicated. It's not like, you don't need to submit a textbook or an essay. It's very, very simple what we need.
Mm.
And if you submit those 5 things, give it your full attention for 20 minutes and submit the thing properly, it makes our job so much easier, right? And then I've got everything I need to make that post. So going and making that post is now a 20-minute thing rather than hunting down stuff, blah, 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 all over the place. And trust me, on a busy day, that can be the difference between you getting posted and not getting posted, because you know what? This one is just too much work.
Right.
And this one that came in at the same time has got everything I need.
It's ready to publish.
Everything I need. It's got the video. It's got like maybe a link to images. It's got a quote from the director that's actually insightful and not just, blowing smoke up the client's butt. It's got credits. It gives you everything that you need. And that makes such a difference. That's one thing that can really tip an average product or average project into getting posted. And it's a thing that can keep an above average project not getting posted because it's just too much hassle, right? In the middle of a busy day, and especially if there's a ton of other stuff coming out at the same time. Now, if it's a really slow day or a very slow week, then yeah, we'll go and dig it up and do all the footwork, but just put yourself in the publisher's position for a second, right? Just think about what it would take to make this post. Am I giving them what they need? And here's an idea. Before you submit something to a site, doesn't have to be ours, go to the site, look around the work that they publish, and see what they use when they publish it, right? Just see what they need. It's
like assets, you mean like pictures, text, insights. Tell me more about that, the director's insight.
Well, that's a very good question. But the stuff we need, the assets we need, yes. Yeah. We need the copy. We don't have to have the images. It's great if there's images. We can get those ourselves. Video. We don't want to download your video. We want to embed it from Vimeo or from YouTube. If there's no other way, yes, we will go through the 20-minute hassle of downloading your video, uploading it to Vimeo, and then, it's just a hassle. It's just more work. Make it less work for the publisher, and you will get published more often, not just with us, with any publisher, right? Anyway, that's my rant on that.
Well, it's true. It's like making it easy for the publisher, for the client. It's kind of the number one thing you want to do. And what I want to know more about is the director's insight, because
sorry, the what?
The insight from the director that you said, like, not just blowing up smoke client's ass, but actually writing something insightful.
Correct.
So, and working with a lot of studio owners, I know, or I have a tendency to believe that this is the hardest thing for any creative. What is insightful for you?
Okay, it's really straightforward. And I understand that talking about your own work can feel like you're bragging. It can feel, I don't know where to start because this project was so huge. You're right, there's a lot of impediments to writing about your own work. So there's a couple ways to get around that. You can have a junior person who has a half a brain and can and writing skills, some social skills to do it. You can have your EP do it or a producer do it. Someone who's not engaged directly in the creative and wasn't buried in this thing for 3 months and has no chance of being objective, right?
That's good.
So
yeah.
That's one way to go about it. And if that's not possible, or you can combine that with the actual questions we ask are, give us a couple of paragraphs on the creative and the technical problems, challenges that you faced and how you overcame them.
Yeah.
Right? Just saying this is a project that I've wanted to do forever and we're so proud to do it. And we're really proud of the team and the client gave us all sorts of creative freedom. Nobody cares. Nobody cares. What we want to hear is we had 4 days or 4 weeks, right? Don't tell me it's a short schedule and move on. How long was the schedule? You don't have to tell me the budget, but if you're going to mention a short schedule, tell me what that schedule was to give it some meat, give it some reality. And then tell us that, it was motion capture and the files were all screwed up, or the client changed his mind halfway through the thing and we had to shift to live action from all CG. These are the real world things that bring a project to life, right? It's all shiny and perfect on the screen, but everybody knows who's been in production at all that that's not the reality. The reality was 3 months of total trauma and to get this thing onto the screen. Of course, they're not all trauma. We've all done
that, but it's a good analogy.
We've all done great, smooth projects, but most of the time, 50% of it is solving problems. I mean, that's what you do for a living. You solve problems. And the better that you are at solving problems, the more clients you have. That's what people are hiring you for. So tell us about those problems, those challenges, and how you solved them. It's as simple as that. You don't have to get all deep and personal about it if you don't want to.
But that makes it so much more relatable because we can all feel the pain, like short schedule, low budget, micromanaging clients.
You just hit the nail on the head. It's about commonality. You're establishing commonality with other production people. Yeah. And then, oh my God, I had that problem too. It's so great to know that I'm not alone. Well, we're not the only studio, that we're in a 14-way pitch, right? It's just it's such an easy and effective and appreciated way to talk about your work.
It is, and it's honest. It's not what you said. It's not this facade of everyone is happy, but it's like we went through this. It was a trauma, and we came out the other side, all wiser. I love that.
You can't be scared to talk about the problems. I mean, nobody believes you that everything went swimmingly. 1 in 20 projects go really, really, really smoothly, right?
I never had one. I never experienced
Ever?
Yes. Well, there were some nice moments in every project, but it's not like every project. Like the bigger the budget gets, the more problems, the more stakeholders, the more problems, the more discussions, the less work you actually do. Stephen, I remember from our warm-up call that when I asked you about what's important to get on Stash, you particularly mentioned the feeling part.
Right.
What does it mean to bring in some feelings, some emotions? What does that mean? Like, why do you look for that?
Well, that's a good question. Why do I look for it is because over the course of doing this for a long time, it began to become very apparent to me that first of all, the technical side is almost a given, right? If you hire a photographer, you assume the picture will be in focus, right? So in some ways, the technical is assumed. Not that we can't acknowledge amazing technical or when technical gets pushed, right? And there's innovative technical things going on. But a lot of times the technical is assumed. So then you're looking at creative, and that's obviously important, but it's not always the thing that that is making me choose the work? And the more I thought about it, it just became very obvious. It's because I laughed. It's because I teared up. It's because when I watched that video, wow, I really want that couch. I really want it. I want to buy that lamp, right? It's covetousness, right? It's greed. It's envy. Those are real feelings. Those are real emotions. And so the more I thought about it, sorry, go ahead.
I just wanted to throw in that those emotions, actually, what he just described is that emotions trigger a purchase, a call to action.
It's not that simple, but I'll explain that chain to you in a second. So I was doing these talks at Promax BDA for a bunch of years, and by the you just the State of Design keynote, right? And that was fun because you get to show cool work and stuff. But by the third year, I was thinking, I got nothing left to say. I got nothing. What am I going to do? This is the third year. What am I going to do? And I can't just show cool work because that just feels so empty. And so I started to think seriously about this emotional quotient that I was believing in. So I started to do some research, and I researched the physiology and the psychology and how those two things meet in terms of how our brain and body works together, right? And there's a 4-step process. There's the outside stimulus, which in our case is an ad, a music video, movie trailer, title sequence, doesn't matter. It's the design. And that stimulus hits each of us and creates an emotion. That emotion creates a feeling, and that feeling will trigger an action. So it's a 4-step process, and it's not a conspiracy theory. I mean, this is just backed up by the data and tons of research, how your brain and your body work together. Now, the difference between an emotion and a feeling is an emotion is very primal. It's just, it's the first thing you feel in your gut, in the back of your lizard brain. And a feeling is your personal interpretation, your subjective interpretation of that emotion. So as an example, go ahead.
It's the interpretation of that emotion, but felt in the body.
Sorry?
The interpretation of the emotion felt through the body.
Well, your feeling. So it's basically in your being. Yeah. So as an example, if the stimulus is danger, right? You're walking in a forest path and you see a bear on the path. My reaction, my emotion is fear. The first thing I feel is fear, right? And my feeling about that fear is I feel scared. And my action is I run away, right? Very simple chain of events. But here's where things diverge. The woman walking next to me sees the same bear, the same stimulus, the same danger, but she's walking with her child, hand in hand with a child. So her immediate reaction, her emotion is anger. Okay? I'm running away, but she feels anger. Don't screw with me and my family. And her instinct, her feeling, her interpretation of that anger is to fight back. Now, probably not the smart thing to do with the bear, but I'm just trying to demonstrate the differences from the same stimulus to very, very divergent paths. She went from anger to feeling protective to fighting back. I went from fear to scared to running away, right? So this is just a demonstration of, in our world, in the design world, your ad, your piece of design is the stimulus. You have to go through emotion and feeling before your customer, your viewer, whoever, your target audience is going to have an action. You cannot assume that because you design something beautiful, people will go buy your thing. It's just not how it works. You have to cause an emotion They will interpret that emotion. And if you've done your job right, they will have the correct action. Not necessarily buy your product, but they'll have a positive action. And that could be sharing your ad. It could be just saving that, like bookmarking that thing for later. It could be going and Googling that product, or it could be going right on the website, clicking the button and buying it right then. Right? You can think of it like my favorite metaphor for it is a trick pool shot. You only get to touch the cue ball, right? You only get to touch the white ball. But to sink the 8 ball, that 8 ball is 3 balls away. You have to hit the emotion ball and the feeling ball to sink the 8 ball. That is a very, very hard pool shot.
And that also means you got to understand the audience, because the emotions, the feeling depends on who you speak to.
Right.
And you can't just throw out a nice animation that you like. You kind of need to adapt.
It's going to be more efficient. It's got to be more efficient if you do. And that's why so many agencies and big brands do research. They're trying to simplify, they're trying to standardize that chain, right? It's not foolproof. And sometimes you can just kick out a beautiful image by instinct and people will buy it because by happenstance and accident, you did line up that chain and it worked. But to be oblivious of that chain and how it actually functions with your brain and your body, according to science and research, you're just, you're just the designer arty guy or girl. It's fine. I'm not telling you to go and do this. I'm not telling you to lock yourself down and suck the life out of your work, trying to read everybody's mind. I'm just saying you need to be aware that this is how things work, right? And so the more you concentrate and learn about feelings and emotions and the full spectrum of them, the better a designer you're going to be, I believe.
I believe so too. And I know that the client kind of expects this. They don't say that because they can't necessarily articulate it in the way you just did. The clients want more than just things looking nice and beautiful, right? They want a return of investment for what they give you. And what I love about what you just said, if you would tell this to a client, the client would immediately give you more money because he trusts you more, because he now understands you know what you're doing. And there's a higher probability of actually getting a good return of investment. So I love that this is a true insight. So if people would talk like that, they wouldn't have problems to sell their work.
Some clients, I think, would appreciate it. I've dealt with clients who don't want to hear anything like that.
Okay.
Like some clients are just like sociopathic businessmen, and they just want a logo. They don't want to hear any design talk.
Yeah.
Stop talking design talk. Just show me the logo, right? I've had clients like that, and that's fine too. But underneath, it doesn't change the fact that his brain works the same way everybody else's does.
Good point. Very good point. That's true. Even though he doesn't admit it and doesn't want to hear it,
yeah,
he's still being triggered by the same things, exposed to the same emotions, the same feelings. Love it. So no matter what the client says, it pays off.
He's going to have a feeling based on that. On when he sees the logo, he will have a feeling.
Yeah. When he sees the logo, he has a feeling. That's good.
Yeah. But the great thing about this is, like I say, I'm not trying to get people to overanalyze everything. And we have a great tool already that has been around for 100,000 years or more to solve a lot of this, and that's called narrative, right? Mm-hmm. Or myth or fiction. And one of the things that narrative does, stories do, are craft or sculpt these emotions, right? You build a story to create emotions, and then there's the resolution of the story. And everybody now likes to say that, we're telling brand stories, which is easy to make fun of. And I certainly have in my time, that everybody's a storyteller. But, you know, in the end, it's actually fantastic that people that they don't see themselves, so they don't say, oh, I'm an animator, I'm a designer. They say I'm a storyteller, which can seem pretentious, right? But it's what's great about it is it means that they're aware
Yes.
of the power of story,
Yes.
right? The power of narrative. And that is a step forward, a big, big step forward from just being, you know, an egotistical animator. I make things move. What do you need me to move? I'll move it.
Where do you need me to move it? Yes. Yeah. Storyteller is actually a big leap. That's true. Not a final leap, but it's a big step forward. Yes.
So I'm going to bring this back around in a circle here. In that same talk, I made the point that the most important part of narrative, the most efficient way to tell stories, was to use characters, right? And that's not a big revelation for a lot of people, but it's important to understand why, I think. And the reason that characters are so efficient and effective in telling stories is because what psychologists call the theory of mind. And that's our ability to put ourselves in other people's shoes, to think, imagine what other people are thinking. And the great thing about that is if you got 6 seconds to you know, then people can skip your ad. Characters arrive with a built-in backstory and a built-in sense of what they're going to do just by the look of them. Because we're so used to seeing characters, analyzing characters, as soon as we see a character, we fill in their backstory, a little bit at least, and we think about what they're going to do. It's just how our brain works. So before the character's even said anything, or you've told anybody anything about this character, they've already formed an opinion and even a mini timeline of that character, right? And that's one of the reasons there's no other element in design that's that efficient in terms of telling a story.
It's true, because it comes with a baggage, with a history,
yeah,
all the narratives. You can even create a conflict within 6 seconds by placing specific characters next to each other.
Mm-hmm. Or within the same character.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So, you know, here's the thing that I was thinking about not very long ago. Given that whole diatribe that I just went through and how powerful characters are for telling stories, put that right against what I said at the beginning of this. What's the biggest trend right now? It's abstract 3D design, right? There is like 99% of that really cool work right now does not have characters in it.
That's good point.
Right? So how do we bring those two together? There's a couple ways, but we don't have time to go into it in a heavy way. So you can just put it down to this. It's not impossible to tell stories and make connections without characters, right? You don't have to have them. And that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying they're the most efficient, they're the easiest, they're the most efficient way to tell story. Now, the fact that one of the reasons I love this whole movement in 3D so much is that they are causing emotions on a massive scale in terms of design. You know, massive, I mean, undeniable that people really, really love this style. And there's no characters. It's purely abstract. And that is, I don't think we've ever seen that before, ever, right? You think back just to the traditional art world when abstraction started to come to bear at the very beginning of the 20th century, right? And then it got up into the mid-century when it sort of hit its peak, and arguably, and it just, you know, it never had the impact that figurative art had. And I know my parents who grew up in that time, they thought it was all a con. My dad thought Picasso was the biggest con artist of all time, right? Because he was drawing like a child, and people were just like paying millions and millions of dollars for it, right? So it's kind of given in that, with that metaphor, the more abstract you get, the more elitist things you usually get, right? In the art world.
Yeah.
But here, we're seeing kind of the exact opposite, in that really, really abstracted forms, although they look shiny and real, there's no characters. There's just often really abstract geometry doing really cool things, and it has a real emotional impact. And that's I just don't know any other industry that has happened.
Is that because the animation creates the character, so to speak? I mean,
Sometimes the product is the character, right?
or the rectangle is the character, whatever.
Or the motion, it has it can be cute, it can be bouncy, it can be fun. There can be some emotion implied in the motion, as it were. But I think part of the secret here, the secret of this work,
Tell me.
is, and all the audio design guys are going to love me for this, but I think audio, the music and sound design, has taken on a huge new importance and is a major reason why this work is so popular. Because if you try watching it without the audio, and it's still visually amazing, but it doesn't have the emotional impact that it does when the music is applied. And of course, that is universal. Music, this is the first time music and audio design or sound design is important. I'm just saying, with this type of work especially, the importance of music and sound design has been amplified, so to speak.
Has been given a broader platform, I'd say. Yes, that's true.
And I think there's more teamwork. I think, from what I understand, interviewing these people and having seen press releases and submissions from so many of them, they consider the partnership with the sound design and musician, they consider them a real creative partner. Often from the very beginning of the project, it's not like when I was in the commercial world, where audio was always pushed way to the end of the schedule.
Mm.
And they were not a total afterthought, but they were really, most of the time, not part of the creative process. And that seems to have changed a lot, which is fantastic. Right? I mean, it's the way it should always have been.
Work becomes more intuitive, more fluent. And yes, I agree. Like like sound design, they always complain, the sound designers, because they always were last to get anything.
Yeah.
And
everybody else's schedule expanded and things got delayed. Well, the delivery date didn't change.
Nope.
So the last guy,
last night, do it. Follow magic. Do something.
Anyway, I think we always are we try to be vigilant about always crediting the audio people as much as we can. Yeah. Because they're just so important.
Yes, they are. And they need to be appreciated much, much more. That's so true. Stephen, one question. What, like, over the last 20 years, are there some stories, some narratives, some movies that still stuck with you? That stuck with you, that still stick with you?
Things that we've covered, you mean?
Yeah, something that stands out in a personal way, maybe, or something that you remember from ages ago, or maybe just last week.
I remember. I should have had some of those prepared, probably, but I would say there was times when you really felt you were seeing the beginning of something new. And the first one that comes to mind is very, very early, when PSYOP was still very young. and it was four partners in an abandoned bar in the Lower East Side of New York. And the work that started to come out of there felt very important. It felt like it was creatively fresh, but very, very confident. It still paid. It wasn't just about style, although it had reams of style, and it was trend setting in that it was starting styles. They were very, very, they adhered to story and knew that the emotional quotient needed to be there.
Mhm.
And those early years of PSYOP, it was very hard for us not to put PSYOP on the cover of, month after month after month.
Yeah.
Right. I had to just
Yes.
put other people on the cover because they were so dominant.
Yes.
Right. That sticks out. I would also say, I think there's longer narratives, longer story arcs that are important. Like, for instance, a rival to PSYOP, which is Buck. The fact that they've been around just as long and have managed to stay as vibrant and as fresh, as trend-setting, is mind-boggling. Because if you've run your own company, it's really, really hard, not only to be in business that long, but to foster a creative atmosphere where everybody wants to work. There's no duds. I don't see any projects that come out of that studio that you just think, wow, they're slipping.
No, they don't. They seriously don't know.
That's an important thing, and they're not the only one. Don't get me wrong. There's a lot of English studios that do a fantastic job, like Netflix, Studio AKA, Passion Pictures, for instance. These people have been around for a really long time, doing excellent work for a long time. So I think those really long narratives are underappreciated, personally.
You mean the long narratives of the studio themselves?
Of the studio and keeping that level of quality.
Yeah, I would count Man vs. Machine in there too. They have been around for ages too. Yeah, there are actually a few. And then that's actually a great point. Is like back in the days, 10, 15, 20 years ago, there weren't as many great studios out there as they are today, right? So as a newcomer, how can you stand out in today's world where you have so much more competition, and on top you also have the legacy companies that you have to stand out against?
Right.
So what strategies, what tactics could work here?
Well, there's a couple of things there. I mean, new talent comes along all the time. I'll give you another example of someone I find a breakout star, if you want. His name is Somai Sun. I hope I'm pronouncing his first name properly. But he's a young Chinese director, designer. And he's been on the cover of Stash. Everything that he does is, I don't want to use the word visionary, is a little strong, but he's not playing by anybody else's rules, right? He's primarily a 3D guy, came up through 3D, very strong sense of design, but strong sense of story, character, rendering, and it's all really cool. It's really, really cool. And I mean, he's not the only one, obviously, but we can't talk about everybody. So how does he make an impact? They start small. They start with regional work. And a lot of guys in the East make their name doing phone commercials, right? Doing beautiful 3D phone commercials. And he did the same thing, but he brought a new level of drama, a new level of narrative, a new level of what would you call it? Just a cinematic quality to these commercials that you just didn't see anywhere else. And then he did some title sequences for design, design conferences, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the actual work, like finding ways to do fresh work for small amounts of money and then getting the word out about that. But I'll tell you, there's one thing that's really common between the greatest people that we're fans of, just from work-wise. And then when you get to know them, they're actually super professional, but also very friendly and no ego, super helpful, right? And so with Samay in this last issue, we have a piece from him, and I just asked him, could you send, a couple of paragraphs, just what I said before about the challenges, and he writes back right away and gives you way more than you need, and just tons of insight, well written, spell checked, and just so easy to deal with, right? And all of the greatest talents like that I've found. Patrick Clare is another one. You know Patrick Clare from
No.
Australian guy, and he was the king of TV title sequences for a long time, won several Emmys. And he's the same way. He's just so easy to deal with, so friendly, so responsive, so forthcoming with the stuff that we want to pass on, right? And always grateful for the coverage, etc. So that's why I'm digressing here. We're talking about how to make yourself stand out. That is one way to make yourself stand out, not just with publishers, but with clients.
Mm-hmm.
They don't want to deal with prima donnas, really, unless you're already a superstar and you can get away with that.
And in the end, anyone that pitches something to you, they want you, right? They want your platform. They want to have something from you. They're selling something. It's not like you're waiting for the next big thing to come, because you have plenty of people, plenty of things to cover.
That's true.
Every single day. So I think this friendliness, this responsiveness, this no ego, I think that goes a long way when you want to have something from someone, right? If you want to get something.
There's confidence and there's insight, but it's not ego based, right?
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, that's a couple of things. There's also, don't submit, if we're talking about publishers, or we're talking about your reel where you're submitting it to clients, don't put everything on there. If you need to do work that pays the bills, that's not great, but you need to pay the bills. We've all been there. You do work that's just not that great. Don't submit it. Don't put it on the reel. If you need to fill up the reel, do personal stuff that looks real, right? But don't garbage up your reel with garbage just because you did it, right? Nobody wants to be associated with that. They want to see, for clients, your reel is aspirational, right? Think of it that way. They want to aspire to have you work for them, is one way to think about it. Mm-hmm. So make your reel aspirational.
That's a good point.
Yeah, it's I was the producer and EP at several studios of those. That was my job, and we cut dozens of reels, custom for people, so that it was for them. We were trying to connect to them. We didn't want to give them the generic logo.
So you made specific reels for clients. That's what you're saying.
Absolutely. We just set up a pipeline that made it really easy to recut the reel really fast. Now, we didn't do it for everybody. And after you've got, 5, 6, 7 reels, that got different feels to them and different emphasis, well, chances are one of those 7 is going to work.
Yeah. Got it.
And then if it's something big and special, you might do something, but you keep them up to date and you make people feel that it's a pitch and it connects with them. So to do that, what do you have to do? Like when you submit your work to a site, you go and you research that site. Don't send your visual effects behind the scenes to somebody who's covering branding and design. It's a waste of your time and a waste of their time. Don't send your fully live action music video to me. I don't cover fully live action stuff, right? Now, if it's live action, it's got some visual effects, some design, some motion design in it, absolutely. But don't waste my time and don't waste their time. Research the publications you're submitting to the same way you would research the client, right? What have they done before? What do they like? What directors have they used before? What studios have they used before? Et cetera, et cetera. Common sense, people.
And is the audience actually like the audience of the platform, of the publishers, that our audience? I think that's a big point too. Like you want to submit your work to an audience that actually appreciates it and that actually can, that knows what to do with it, that understands it. Good point.
So if you have a list of 30 publications that you submit to, and you keep submitting everything to all 30 publications, it doesn't make any sense, because the people on the other end get the idea that you have no idea what they do. You're just sending garbage to them. You're just sending everything, hoping something will stick. That's not how things stick.
Hoping something will stick and spamming people, that's true. And in the end, they probably, not listen to you anymore anyway. Good point. So
you just need to be a little bit more mindful of it. It's not like there's 1,000 places to submit your work, right? Just be a little more mindful of it and you will have greater success, right? Now you can say, there's people that submit to me and you can feel their growing frustration because things aren't getting, over the course of a year, they submit 6 things and nothing's getting published. You can feel the brittleness and the tension on the other end as their emails get less and less patient. And dude, I don't think you've ever been to my site. I can tell.
Okay, that's the impression you have. That's the impression you have.
If you were there, you weren't actually watching and listening. It's just, anyway, it's just like anything else in life. You want to sell something to somebody, take your time. Do a little research.
Make an effort. Yeah. Stephen.
Anyway, more ranting.
I love it. No, because those are the things people need to hear. Those seem to be obvious, those ideas, those instructions. But you're right, we're not paying enough attention on how we pitch, on the thoughtfulness, on the easiness of the things we want to bring over.
So I understand that submitting your stuff is the very end of the process, and you're tired from doing the project. You're exhausted, right? Now I just want someone to recognize this stuff. God damn it, just publish my work. Well, I understand that. I was in production, right? I understand that. But that's not how we see the world. And that's not how the world sees your work.
And that's a good reality check. I love it.
Take a day, take a week. Take your time, relax. Write your press release, and then put it aside and come back the next day and write it again. And take your time, just do it, give it some effort. It doesn't have to be super professional. You don't have to be a PR person. Most of the time, the stuff that comes from PR people is very well organized. It's just full of so much fluff that it's really hard to use. And we'll get a press release, that's this long, and we'll use the quotes. And that's because the rest of it is really blowing smoke up the client's butt, and nobody can use that. Nobody can use that. The only place that stuff gets published is on sites where you publish yourself, right? Which have their uses. I'm not putting them down. But nobody wants to read that. Nobody's going to read through that amount of stuff. They want to get to the meat, right? And for us, the meat is, let's talk to the people who created this thing.
Mm-hmm.
What are their thoughts? What were their challenges? How did they solve this?
How did they feel?
Yeah.
Who's on the next Dash issue? On the cover of the next Dash?
The one that's just coming out this week is a music video out of France, and I can't remember the band, but the studio is called Pencil TV, and it's a lovely, lovely, lovely piece of work. It's 3D, but it's very soft and atmospheric. It's full of metaphors, like visual metaphors, like you might have found in old editorial illustrations.
Mm-hmm. Oh, got it.
Yeah, it's really lovely. And it happened to have a great frame in it that made a good cover, right? The two things have to line up. But there's a ton of cool stuff on this one. I think it's one of our strongest, really. I think it's just because there's back to the democratization thing we're talking about. There's just more and more studios doing world-class work. Like literally there isn't, I don't know, 3 times a week, we discover a new studio that's doing world-class work. Literally world-class work that we've never heard of before.
Mm-hmm.
It's our job to hear of these studios, right? And it's literally 3 times a week that, and it's not all publishable, but going, who is this? Where are they from? Another studio from Barcelona. Okay. All right.
How many studios can there be?
That's right.
Barcelona. That's true. Yeah, it's true. It's just like when I go out there and look for clients or talk to people, I think creatives don't realize how much competition there actually is, how much world-class competition they have these days. It's amazing. It's scary, but it's also exciting. You can learn so much. Also means that the market, the whole cake gains in size. So
there's a lot more screens to fill, and there's a lot more
screens to fill. Yes.
But and one of the interesting things about that is the quality of work. It wasn't a whole long time ago when an explainer video was like, no thanks. We don't do explainer videos.
Yes, I remember that, yeah.
I mean, I've never done one when I was in production. And if someone had asked us to, it would be like doing a slideshow. It would be like, no thanks. But now, or just product reveals, right? That used to be relegated to some junior guy or girl and who just learned 3D and, make it spin around a couple times and see if you can make the lighting kind of, good. And now some of the best animation that we see in the design motion world is exactly that. They're explainers and they're product reveals, right? So the quality, the breadth of work is expanding because the number of screens has expanded exponentially.
Yes.
Now the quality is trickling down from not just big budget ads, right? But it's trickling down to the smaller budget things. So our expectations of explainer videos, and then I'm not talking about, the whiteboard commoditized stuff, but stuff that still has a script and a storyboard and is a story to tell, really, is that quality is trickling down through everything.
Yeah.
And it's really heartening to see. It's just lovely to see that level of quality being applied to almost anything, right?
Yeah.
In the motion design world, I'm talking about, obviously.
I loved to do product launches when I was still in the game. That was the easiest job because you actually had the most creative freedom doing that because no one cared. And that was always a fun job. And you could play so much with animation. You could do crazy things. It wasn't that, yeah. Usually you just had a creative director to convince and not like every stakeholder.
Right.
So yeah.
Well, there's another interesting part to that, in that it has to do with the democratization aspect, and that tools are getting easier to use. Computers are more powerful, etc. You see, you can generate a lot more footage and a lot of really interesting footage. And especially in the 3D world that we've been talking about. There's a project coming up in this next issue where we always ask them what the schedule was, right? As part of the questions. And this one was 3 months. And the first month and a half of this project was spent on pure R&D.
Nice.
A month and a half out of a 3-month project was purely playing around, trying to generate imagery that no one else has ever seen before, right? And so I'm not sure how much, actual linear footage they generated in that time, but let's just say 2 hours. Let's just say there was 2 hours worth of stuff, tests and retests and version A, B, C, and D, right? Generated ad nauseum, filling up disks. And then you got to fill 30 seconds. The spot is 30 seconds long. You generated 2 hours. So then the real job becomes curatorial, right? How am I going to choose 30 seconds out of those 2 hours that will electrify people? And that comes down to choosing the shots, editing them. That's pure curatorial. And of course, combined with the audio that we've already talked about, right? That's a very exciting place to be in design. Because if you came up in animation when I did, there was no extra frames generated.
Yeah, no meat.
You've generated, there might have been 3 or 4 frames on the end of a scene, and that was it, right? Because it was expensive and it was hard to do. Now, you can generate totally unprecedented imagery like it's live action. Like it's just flowing out of your team. And then the creative director is honing it, right? And then finally packaging and editing. And it's just like a golden time for design. I'm really happy to be a part of it, It's the best job in the world. Best job I ever had.
That's a great point, a great statement. And I'm sorry to cut this short, but we are at the 1 hour mark.
Okay.
And I'd love to talk to you again. It has been insightful. It has been pleasant. One last question. What's like a message that you want to leave the audience with?
This audience, or like the worldwide Stash audience?
Ideally the same.
Okay.
The same.
Good point. I don't know. I guess you gotta wrap all this up. Really depends where you are in your career, where you are in the production pipeline. But I think if you approach this job with a sense of purpose, you take it seriously, but you also take it with a sense of delight at the same time, then that's going to show through, right? So it's like professional and light at the same time. So you're dead serious about what you do, but you also know that what you do is not brain surgery, right? This is design. We're selling stuff. We're making things look good. So let's not get our knickers in a twist, but also remember, this can be super, super crucial for a client, right? So if you can balance those two things, I think you're going to be happy, and there's a ton of joy to be found in the industry. But you need to realize that there's all these balls that need to be juggled, right? The creative, the technical, the emotional that we just talked about, but also your own place in it, where you're very professional, but can see that it can be fun. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. Playful but also serious. Yep.
Like those people that I'm talking about that I respect so much, when they're being friendly, they can snap instantly from friendly to professional. Two sides of them are there in parallel. It's just like layers in Photoshop. They just bring one to the front, but can immediately switch them, right? Because the two sides of them are operating in parallel.
That's a great idea, because you don't have to mix them. You can actually prioritize them one at a time,
and bring one out when it's necessary, and have total mastery of both, and not think that because I'm professional, I can't be fun and friendly, and to think that just because I'm fun and friendly doesn't mean I can't be businesslike and professional. Those two things are two halves of the same construct, right? You need to have them both, I believe.
So do I.
Yeah.
Thanks for that. It was lovely having you on the show, and I hope we can do this again, because there's obviously a lot more to discuss when it comes to motion design, the creative industry. And yeah, I'm looking forward to having you on the show in the future again. And thanks for your time today.
Well, it's my pleasure. Thank you. Flattered to be here.
Thanks. Thanks for tuning in. My name is Marco Fun, and I hope to see you all again on our next show, where we unfold creative business minds.